The prairie stretched endless under the dying light, grass rippling like golden waves beneath a wind that carried the scent of sage and distant rain. Amos Hale sat his horse at the edge of his property, watching the sun bleed crimson across the horizon. At 34, he'd grown accustomed to these solitary evenings. The quiet, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the creak of leather as his mare shifted her weight. His cabin stood a quarter-mile back, a modest structure of hewn logs and determination. Smoke curled from the chimney, though no one waited inside to tend the fire. He'd built it himself after Sarah died. Fever took her 3 winters past, along with the child she carried. The memories lived in the walls now, in the quilt she'd sewn that still covered his narrow bed, in the cast-iron pot that hadn't cooked a proper meal since. Amos turned his mare toward home, ready for another evening of beans and silence, when something caught his eye along the dusty track that passed for a road. A figure stumbled, fell, rose again. Even from this distance, he could tell it wasn't natural movement too desperate, too pained. He spurred the mare forward, hand instinctively moving to the Winchester in its scabbard. Out here. Caution kept a man breathing, but as he drew closer, his wariness shifted to something else. A woman, barely more than a girl by the look of her, clutched 2 bundles to her chest. Her dress, once blue calico, hung torn at the shoulder. Dark stains, blood, he realized marked her sleeve. "Ma'am." He dismounted 20 feet away, moving slow. Wild things spooked easy, and she had that look about her cornered, ready to bolt or fight despite having no strength for either. She swayed, knees buckling. "Please." Her voice came raw, like she'd been screaming. "They'll take them. Can't let them take my babies." The bundles moved, and Amos heard the thin wail of an infant. 2 of them, he realized. Twins. The woman girl. Really, couldn't be more than 23. 24 at most. Tried to step back as he approached, but her legs gave out. She went down hard, still clutching those bundles like they were the only things tethering her to earth. "Easy now." Amos kept his voice low, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "Nobody's taking nothing. You're safe." Her eyes, green as spring grass, found his face. Beautiful eyes, he thought absently, though one was swelling shut, purple-black bruising spreading across her cheekbone. "You don't understand. They said daughters ain't worth keeping. Said they'd find someone who'd want them, someone who'd pay." Rage, hot and sudden, flared in Amos's chest. He'd seen plenty of cruelty in his years. But this, who did this to you? "Dead husband's kin, the Thorns. Said I cursed their bloodline, giving birth to girls when the family needs sons." She laughed, a broken sound. "As if I had a choice in what God gave me." Amos knelt beside her, careful not to crowd. "What's your name?" Maybelle Carter." She shifted, and one of the bundles started crying properly. "These are Anna and Emma. They're only 3 months old." 3 months. Christ. And she'd been walking how long her feet were bleeding through what remained of her boots. Amos made a decision that would change everything, though he didn't know it then. "I've got a wagon back at my place. We'll get you and the little one somewhere safe." Her laugh turned bitter. "Ain't no place safe, not for a widow with no sons. The law won't help. Sheriff's cousin to the Thorns." "My place, then." The words came before he could think better of them. "Just till you heal up. Figure what comes next." Suspicion flared in those green eyes. "Why would you do that? What's your price?" "No price. Just can't leave you and 2 babies out here for the coyotes." He stood, offered his hand. "Name's Amos Hale. I run cattle about 2 miles north. Nothing fancy, but it's got walls and a roof." She stared at his hand like it might bite. "I've got nothing to pay you with." "I didn't ask for payment." "Men always want payment, one kind or another." The word stung, but he couldn't fault her caution. "Well, I ain't most men. You can walk away if you want, but those babies need shelter, and you're about done in. Sometimes help is just help. For a long moment, she studied him. Then, slow as molasses, she took his offered hand. Her fingers were ice cold despite the day's warmth. He helped her stand, pretending not to notice how she swayed. "I can walk," she said, though they both knew it for a lie. "Course you can, but the horse is faster." He whistled, and the mare ambled over, well-trained and patient. "You ever ridden?" "Not carrying 2 babies." "Then we'll go slow." He helped her mount, made sure the infants were secure. One had stopped crying, but he could hear little snuffling sounds, healthy sounds. That was good. He took the reins, leading the mare on foot. Maybelle sat rigid at first, but exhaustion won. By the time they reached his cabin, she was slumped forward, only his steadying hand keeping her from falling. The cabin looked smaller with company approaching. He'd built it for practical living, not comfort. One main room with a fireplace, a lean-to bedroom, a root cellar. The barn stood off to the side, sturdy and larger than the house. Priorities of a cattleman. "It ain't much," he said, helping her down. "It's standing. That's more than I had an hour ago." She clutched the babies tighter as he guided her inside. The main room smelled of wood smoke and coffee. His few possessions, a table, 2 chairs. The rocking chair Sarah had loved seemed to shrink under a woman's gaze. But Maybelle wasn't looking at the furniture. Her eyes fixed on the fireplace, the warmth, the safety of walls. "Bed's through there." He gestured to the lean-to. "You take it. I'll bunk out here." "I couldn't." "You could and you will. Those babies need their mama strong. And you need rest." He moved to the fireplace, adding wood. "There's water in the pitcher for washing. I'll heat some for proper cleaning once you're settled." She stood there, swaying slightly, like she couldn't quite believe she'd stopped moving. One of the babies, Anna or Emma, he didn't know which, let out a thin cry. "They're hungry," Maybelle said, something like shame in her voice. "I ain't had much to eat, and the milk—" "Got a cow out back. We'll manage." He kept his voice matter-of-fact, like finding beaten women with infant twins was common occurrence. "You get settled. I'll see about food." He left her there, heading for the barn. The familiar routine of milking helped steady his thoughts. What in hell was he doing taking in a stranger, a woman? No less. The talk in town would be fierce, but he thought of those bruises, the desperation in her voice, the way she held those babies like they were all that mattered in the world. When he returned with milk and what food, he could scramble bread, some dried meat. The last of the preserves Sarah had put up, he found her sitting on the bed, both babies at her breast. She'd tried to clean herself, but exhaustion was winning. Blood still crusted her hairline. "I'll leave this here," he said, setting the food on the small table by the bed. "You eat what you can. I'll heat water for washing." "Mr. Hale." "Amos." "Amos." She tested the name. "I need you to know something. If you're thinking I'm the kind of woman who... I'm thinking you're a mother who needs help. Nothing more." He met her eyes steady. "My wife died 3 years back. I know something about grief and being alone. You're safe here, Mrs. You and the little ones, long as you need." Tears tracked down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt and dried blood. "I don't even know why you stopped." He considered the question, looking at this slip of a girl holding 2 babies, bearing marks of cruelty that went soul deep. Maybe because I've gotten too used to being alone. Maybe because it's the decent thing. Does it matter? She shook her head slowly. "They'll come looking, the thorns. They'll say I stole from them, that the babies are their blood." "Let them come." The words came out harder than he intended. "I've dealt with their kind before." She studied him then, really looked. Saw the calluses, the sun-weathered skin, the steadiness that came from years of standing against whatever the frontier threw at a man. Something in her shoulders eased. Just a fraction. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude. I'll get that water. Outside, night was falling proper. Stars began their ancient dance across the darkening sky. Amos pumped water, his mind already running through what needed doing. The woman, Maybelle, would need clothes. The babies would need things he didn't even know about. Town talk would start the moment he showed up buying female necessities. Let them talk, he decided. He'd faced worse than gossip. When he brought the heated water inside, she was asleep, both babies tucked against her. Even in exhaustion, she kept one arm curved protective around them. He set the basin down quiet, found an old blanket to drape over all three. In the main room, he made his pallet by the fire and lay staring at the ceiling. The cabin felt different with breathing that wasn't his own. Fuller, somehow, more alive. Through the thin walls, one of the babies whimpered. He heard Maybelle stirring, murmuring comfort. The sound pulled at something in his chest he'd thought buried with Sarah. This would complicate everything. He knew it bone deep. The Thorns wouldn't let this go. The town would create their own version of the story. His simple, solitary life was about to become anything but. Yet, as he listened to her soft humming some melody he didn't recognize, Amos found he didn't much care. Sometimes a man got tested not by what he sought, but by what found him on a dusty road at sunset. Sometimes doing right mattered more than doing easy. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing on the walls. Outside, coyotes called to each other across the vast darkness. But inside, for the first time in 3 years, the cabin felt like something more than just shelter. It felt like the beginning of something he couldn't yet name. The first week passed in careful rhythms. Amos woke before dawn, as was his custom, but now moved quiet through the cabin, mindful of the sleeping woman and babies in the next room. He'd kindle the fire, set coffee brewing, then slip out to tend the stock. By the time he returned, Maybelle would be up. The babies fed and swaddled, her face a careful mask that revealed nothing. She'd tried to leave twice. The first time, he'd found her packing what little she had, favoring her bruised ribs. "I can't impose further," she'd said, not meeting his eyes. "Where would you go?" The question hung between them until she unpacked again. The second time, she'd made it as far as the porch before Emma, or was it Anna, started wailing. The sound brought him from the barn at a run. Finding Maybelle collapsed on the steps, too weak still to carry both babies far. "Pride makes poor shelter," he'd told her, helping her back inside. "And charity makes poor foundation," she'd shot back, but she stayed. By the 10th day, they'd found an uneasy peace. She insisted on working mending his clothes, cooking meals that made his usual beans and biscuits seem like sawdust, keeping the cabin cleaner than it had been since Sarah. He didn't know how to tell her to rest without implying she wasn't earning her keep, so he let her work, watching for signs of overtiring. The bruises were fading from purple-black to yellow-green. She still flinched at sudden movements, but less each day. The babies thrived on cow's milk mixed with what she could provide, their cheeks rounding out, their cries stronger. It was the morning he decided to go to town that things shifted. "I need supplies," he said over breakfast. "Few things the ranch needs. Thought you might write a list of necessities." Her hand stilled over the bread she was slicing. "I've no money. I didn't ask for any. I won't be further beholden." "Woman, those babies need proper swaddling clothes. And you need a dress that ain't held together by thread and prayer. It's practical, not charity." She set down the knife carefully. "The town will talk. Let them." "You don't understand. A single man buying infant needs and women's clothing." Her laugh was bitter. "They'll paint stories that'll ruin us both." "My reputation's my concern. And mine, what's left of it." She met his eyes then, direct in a way she hadn't been before. "You've been kind, Mr. Hale." "Amos." "Amos. But kindness don't change how the world sees a woman in my position. Widow with no family, no prospects, sheltering with a man not her husband. They'll call me things, and they'll say worse about why you took me in." He pushed back from the table, frustrated. So we let the babies go without because of wagging tongues. I'm saying maybe I should go to town, face whatever comes. With 2 infants and healing ribs, while the thorns might be watching for you. He shook his head. Make the list. Mabel, I'll handle the talk. She studied him long enough that he shifted under her gaze. Then, wordless, she found a pencil and scrap of paper, writing in careful script. When she handed it over, their fingers brushed. She pulled back like she'd been burned. The ride to Cedar Falls took 2 hours through country that rolled and dipped like God's own washboard. The town itself wasn't much one main street, a few crossroads, buildings thrown up quick and cheap, but it served the ranches spread across the territory, and that made it necessary. Amos started at Henderson's Dry Goods, run by Edgar Henderson and his wife Prudence. The moment he walked in, Prudence's eyes sharpened like a hawk spotting prey. Amos Hale, haven't seen you in near a month. Been busy. He pulled out the list, keeping his face neutral. Prudence read over his shoulder, her eyebrows climbing with each item. Infant clothes, feeding bottles, ladies' undergarments. That's right. My. She exchanged glances with 2 other women browsing bolts of fabric. And here we thought you were set on bachelor ways. Just need the items on the list. Prudence. She gathered things slow, making sure the other women saw each piece. By the time he left, laden with packages, he could feel the speculation burning into his back. The feed store was worse. Men lounged outside, passing a bottle despite the early hour. Well, Amos Hale. Jake Morrison, who ran cattle on the neighboring spread, grinned unpleasant. Heard you had company out your way. That's so. Sam Deacon saw smoke from your chimney middle of the day last week. Figured you must be sick, being inside working hours. But then he spotted washing on the line, women's washing. The other men chuckled, the sound ugly with insinuation. Man does his own washing. Amos said mild. Ladies' dresses under things. Jake's grin widened. Must say, Hale, didn't figure you for the type to entertain working girls. Amos set down his packages deliberate. You got something to say? Morrison, say it plain. The grin faltered. Everyone knew Amos Hale wasn't a man to push careless. Just making conversation. Find another topic. He gathered his goods and headed for Doc Ellis's office. The doctor, at least, showed discretion. A thin man with careful hands and tired eyes. Ellis had tended everything from gunshots to difficult births. He listened to Amos's abbreviated explanation without judgment. Injuries healing well? He asked, preparing a packet of medicines. Seems so. Ribs is the worst, I think. Those take time. The bruising. Fading. Ellis nodded, adding rolled bandages to the packet. She's lucky you found her. Not many would have stopped. Not many would have beat her and thrown her out with infant twins neither. True enough. Ellis paused. You know Calvin Thorns in town came in yesterday, drinking heavy at the saloon. Amos's jaw tightened. Calvin, oldest of the Thorn cousins. Meanest, too. Thanks for the warning. Might want to finish your business quick. But it was too late. As Amos loaded his wagon outside, boot heels rang on the boardwalk. He didn't need to look to know who approached. Amos Hale. Calvin Thorne's voice carried the kind of confidence that came from always having numbers at your back. Been hoping to run into you. Amos finished tying down his load before turning. Calvin stood with 2 other men, all wearing gun belts, low and loose. Trouble looking for an excuse. Thorne. Heard you found something belongs to my family. Found a beaten woman and 2 babies by the road. Nothing more. Calvin's face darkened. That woman stole from us. Took what wasn't hers to take. Her own children. Children born under my cousin's roof, fed by our grain. She's got no right to them. No right to anything. He stepped closer. The whiskey smell was strong. She there now at your place? My property's my business. Not when you're harboring thieves. Calvin smiled, cold as winter wind. Maybe I should ride out, see for myself, make sure you ain't been taken in by a clever piece playing helpless. Amos felt the rage building, kept it leashed. You're welcome to try. Something in his voice must have warned them. The men with Calvin shifted, hands moving toward weapons, but the street had filled with watchers, shop owners in doorways, women pausing their errands, witnesses. Calvin noticed too. His smile turned calculating. No need for unpleasantness, just want what's ours returned. Family blood belongs with family. Funny notion of family, marking women and throwing them out to die. You don't know what she is, what she done. I know enough. They stared at each other while the town held its breath. Finally. Calvin stepped back, tipping his hat mockingly. This ain't over. Hail. Law's on our side. Blood rights. You remember that. He walked away, his men following. Amos finished loading and left town without another word, but he could feel the eyes watching, the tongues already wagging. The ride home seemed longer. He'd lit a match to dry tinder, and now it would burn. How fast and how far remained to be seen. He found Maybelle in the garden plot, baby sleeping in a makeshift cradle fashioned from a drawer. She was on her knees, pulling weeds with fierce concentration. When she heard the wagon, she stood quick, shading her eyes. Any trouble? Nothing immediate. He started unloading, noting how she moved to help without being asked. Met Calvin Thorne. Her face went pale beneath the sun-brown. What did he say? Nothing worth repeating. Made threats he's too smart to follow through on. Yet, they worked in silence, carrying packages inside. When she saw the extent of what he'd bought, not just necessities, but small comforts. Soap that smelled of lavender. Fabric for new dresses, her eyes filled. This is too much. It's what's needed. He set down the last load, turned to find her closer than expected. There's something else. The town knows you're here. The talk started. She nodded slow. I figured it would. It'll get worse before it better. Maybe not better at all. I know. She met his eyes steady. I'm sorry for bringing this to your door. I'm not. The words hung between them, heavier than intended. She looked away first, busying herself with unpacking. That evening, Martha Whelan arrived, near 60, widowed twice. Martha had survived everything the frontier could throw and come out tougher than boot leather. She didn't knock, just walked in like she owned the place. So, she announced, eyeing Maybelle up and down. You're the cause of all the fuss. Maybelle straightened, chin lifting. I suppose I am. Martha's weathered face cracked into a grin. Good. Town was getting boring. She turned to Amos. You got coffee on. We need to talk strategy. Over the next hour, Martha proved why she'd survived when others hadn't. She extracted Maybelle's story with gentle ruthlessness, assessed the situation with practical eyes, and laid out facts plain. The Thornes will use law if they can, force if they can't. Calvin's mean but not stupid. He'll build his case first. Meanwhile, you, she pointed at Maybelle, need to be seen as respectable. Widow woman caring for her children, nothing more. How do I do that when I'm living under a bachelor's roof? Martha snorted. Half the territory's got arrangements that don't bear close looking. Difference is discretion. She considered. I'll come by regular, chaperone, like my presence'll quiet some talk. I can't ask. Didn't ask. I'm volunteering. Martha's eyes softened. Been where you are, girl. Not exact, but close enough. Sometimes women got to circle the wagons for each other. After she left, promising to return in 2 days, the cabin felt different. The outside world had intruded, bringing complications they couldn't ignore. Amos found Maybelle standing by the window, watching the sunset. The babies slept peaceful in their drawer cradle. You all right? She didn't turn. I was foolish, thinking I could run far enough. Nothing foolish about trying to save your children. But at what cost? Your reputation? Your peace? She faced him then, and he saw tears tracking silent down her cheeks. You've been nothing but kind, and I've brought trouble to your door. Without thinking, he reached out, thumb brushing away a tear. She went still as a startled deer, but didn't pull away. Trouble was always coming, he said quiet. Way I see it, at least now it's for something worthwhile. She searched his face like she was looking for lies and finding none. I don't understand you, Amos Hale. Nothing complicated to understand, just a man trying to do right. In my experience, men always want something. Maybe so, but all I want is to see you and those babies safe. That crime enough? She laughed, shaky but real. In this world might be the worst crime of all. The drought came sudden and mean, like most troubles in that country. One day the sky was normal blue. The next it turned brass-colored and stayed that way. The wind shifted, carrying dust instead of moisture, and the grass began to brown at the edges. Amos noticed it first in the cattle. They bunched near the water trough, lowing uneasily. The creek that fed his property, usually reliable even in dry spells, ran sluggish and muddy. How bad will it get? Maybelle asked, watching him calculate water stores. Hard to say. Seen it last a week, seen it last 2 months. He didn't mention the drought of '61 that killed half the county's livestock. No point borrowing worry. But worry came anyway when little Emma developed a cough. Started small, just a tickle that made her fussy. Within 2 days, she was burning with fever. Her breathing labored. It's the dust, Maybelle said, walking endless circles with the baby against her shoulder. Gets in their lungs. Anna's starting too. Both babies were struggling by the 4th day. Their cries, when they had strength to cry, were weak and pitiful. Maybelle hadn't slept in 40 hours, her face drawn with exhaustion and fear. I'm riding to town, Amos announced. Doc Ellis needs to see them. The Thorns. Damn the Thorns. He was already saddling the mare. Bundle them warm. We're going. The ride to Cedar Falls had never seemed longer. Maybelle sat the horse with both babies clutched tight, Amos leading on foot to keep the pace smooth. Dust devils danced across their path, and the sun beat down merciless. Doc Ellis took one look at the babies and ushered them inside quick. His examination was thorough but gentle, his face growing more concerned with each wheeze from tiny lungs. Dust pneumonia, he said finally. See it in the young ones during dry spells. They need moisture, clean air, and this. He prepared a tincture, showing Maybelle how to administer drops. Keep them warm but not hot. Steam helps boil water. Make a tent with blankets. Will they? Maybelle couldn't finish. They're strong babies. Caught it early. But this drought keeps up. He shook his head. You got a good water source. Creek's running low, Amos admitted. Then ration careful. These little ones need priority. Ellis packed medicines, refusing payment. You focus on keeping them breathing. Worry about my fee when they're running around causing mischief. The trip home was tense with purpose. Amos's mind ran through water calculations, so much for the cattle, the horses, cooking, cleaning, and now constant steam for the babies. The numbers didn't add up comfortable. That night, they worked together without need for words. Amos rigged a tent over the drawer cradle while Maybelle kept water boiling. The cabin filled with steam until the windows ran with moisture. But slowly, painfully, the baby's breathing eased. Thank God, Maybelle whispered when Emma finally slept peaceful. Thank Doc Ellis, Amos corrected, but he felt the relief just as deep. The next days blurred together. Hauling water from the creek took longer as the level dropped. The garden withered despite Maybelle's careful tending. Cattle started looking gaunt, and Amos had to make hard choices about which stock to keep and which to drive to market early. Through it all, they maintained the steam treatments. The cabin became a humid cave. Clothes never quite drying. Everything damp to the touch. But the babies improved steady, their color returning, coughs lessening. It was while Amos was hauling the 10th bucket of the day that riders appeared on the horizon. 3 of them, moving purposeful toward the cabin. "Company," he called to Maybelle, setting the bucket down and checking the Winchester was handy. She appeared in the doorway, Anna on her hip. The baby was almost smiling now, a vast improvement from the blue-tinged gasping of days before. The riders were Calvin Thorne and 2 men Amos didn't recognize, hired guns. By the look of them trailed dust thick on their clothes, faces hard as flint. "Hail," Calvin called, reining up just outside polite distance. "Heard you had sick young ones." "News travels." Doc Ellis is a talker when he's worried. Calvin's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Shame about the babies. This drought's hard on the weak." Maybelle stiffened in the doorway, but Amos touched her arm light, warning. "They're recovering well," he said even. "Good to hear. Hate to see innocents suffer for their mama's choices." Calvin leaned forward in his saddle. "You know, family takes care of family. Those babies had a proper home. They'd have clean water, good food. Wouldn't be subject to hardships. They have what they need." "Do they?" Calvin gestured at the withered garden, the dusty yard. "How long your water hold out?" "Hail week 2. What happens when you're choosing between your stock dying and those babies drinking?" "That's my concern." "Is it because, way I see it, you're risking those children out of pride, or maybe something else?" His eyes slid to Maybelle, the suggestion clear. Judge might find that interesting. Man keeping a woman and her babies in poor conditions when family's offering better. One of the hired guns shifted, hand casual near his pistol. The threat hung thick as the dust in the air. "You finished," Amos kept his voice mild, though rage simmered beneath. "For now, but this drought's just starting, and we got nothing but time." Calvin touched his hat mocking. "You think on what I said. Think real hard." They rode off slow, making sure their presence was felt. Maybelle sagged against the doorframe once they were gone. "He's right," she said quiet. "About the water, the hardship, maybe—" "Don't," Amos cut her off sharp. "Don't you dare think of giving in to that snake." "But if the babies—" "We'll manage." He met her eyes fierce. "I've weathered worse than drought. We'll find a way." That night, Martha arrived with her husband's old water barrels in her wagon. "Figured you could use extra storage," she said gruff. "Fill these while the creek's still running at all." Pride warred with necessity. Necessity won. They spent hours hauling water, filling every container they could find. Martha worked alongside them, steady as bedrock. "Heard Calvin was out this way," she said casual. "Came calling," Amos confirmed. "Bastard's been spreading talk in town. Says you're endangering those babies, keeping them in squalor." She spat eloquent. "Course, he don't mention the mark still healing on their mama." "Law won't care about that," Maybelle said bitter. "Maybe not, but decent folks do." Martha paused her work. "You got more friends than you know, girl. Not everyone's fooled by thorn money." It was small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. The drought deepened. Each day the sun rose angry in a cloudless sky. The creek dwindled to a trickle, then to scattered pools. Amos culled his herd ruthless, keeping only breeding stock. The money from selling early and cheap would help, but it set the ranch back years. Worse were the dust storms. They came sudden walls of brown that turned day to night. The first one caught Maybelle outside. Amos found her crouched by the chicken coop, shielding both babies with her body while dirt scoured any exposed skin. Inside, he pulled all 3 into the cabin, slamming the door against the howling wind. Even so, dust seeped through every crack, coating everything in fine grit. When it passed, they looked like ghosts, hair gray with dust, eyes red-rimmed. The babies coughed, bringing back fear of the pneumonia. "We need to seal the cabin better," Amos said. already planning. Mud chinking, cloth over the windows. They worked together, turning the cabin into a fortress against the elements. Maybelle proved surprising strong, mixing mud and straw while Amos applied it to gaps. Her hands, once soft, grew calloused. Her face, despite the hardship, showed determination instead of defeat. "You're different," he told her one evening. They sat on the porch, watching another dusty sunset while the babies slept. "Different how?" "Stronger, like the drought's tempering you." She laughed soft. "Or just wearing me down to nothing." "No." He shook his head. "I've seen people break under less. You're not breaking, you're becoming something harder. Better." She was quiet long enough he thought she wouldn't answer. "Then, my husband used to say I was too soft, too weak for frontier life." Her voice carried old pain. "Maybe he was right. Maybe that's why—" "He was wrong," Amos interrupted firm. "Man who'd beat a woman carrying his children, throw her out for birthing daughters, his judgment ain't worth spit." "You don't know what I did? What I might have done to deserve—" "Nothing." He turned to face her full. "Hear me clear. Maybelle Carter. Nothing you could have done deserved that treatment. Nothing." Tears tracked through the dust on her cheeks. "You're a strange man, Amos Hale." "So you keep saying." A moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Then Anna cried inside, breaking the spell. The crisis came 2 weeks into the drought. The creek went dry complete, just cracked mud where water should be. Their stored water was lasting, but barely. The cattle bellowed constant, and Amos knew he'd have to drive them to the Morrison spread, beg access to their deeper well. It was while he was gone that trouble struck. Maybelle was drawing water careful from their dwindling stores when she heard horses. Too late to hide Calvin, and 4 men were already in the yard. Well. Calvin dismounted lazy. "All alone, are we?" Mr. Hale will be back soon." She hated how her voice shook. Will he now saw him driving cattle toward Morrison's? That's a full day's work. Calvin stepped closer. She backed against the wall. "Gives us time to talk business." "We have no business." "Sure we do. See, I've been patient. Tried doing this legal-like. But judges move slow, and those babies need proper care now." He nodded to his men. "So we're going to take them home where they belong." "No." She moved to block the door. "You can't I?" He grabbed her arm, fingers digging into healing bruises. "You got no husband, no rights, just a thieving woman who run off with property belonging to the Thorne family." She tried to pull free. His grip tightened. One of his men laughed ugly. "Course," Calvin continued, voice dropping low. "We could come to an arrangement. You're young still, pretty enough, under the dirt. Come back willing-like. Be a good girl, and maybe—" The click of a hammer cocking cut him off. Martha stood 10 feet away, shotgun steady. "Let her go, Calvin, for I decorate my yard with your innards." Calvin released Maybelle slow. "Martha, this ain't your concern. Girl under my protection makes it my concern." Martha's voice could have etched steel. "Now mount up and ride out. Less you want to explain to the sheriff how you came to be trespassing and assaulting women?" "Sheriff's my cousin," Calvin reminded her. "And Judge Carter ain't, neither is Marshal Bridges from the county seat." Martha smiled cold. "Been writing letters. I have. Amazing what a widow with time and education can accomplish." Something in Calvin's face shifted. Calculation replacing confidence. "This ain't over. Never thought it was, but it's over for today." The shotgun never wavered. "Get!" They mounted and rode off, but not before Calvin locked eyes with Maybelle. The promise there was clear as spoken words. Martha lowered the gun once they were gone. "Pack what matters. Girl, this is escalating past what we can handle alone." But when Amos returned that night, exhausted and covered in trail dust, Maybelle met him different. Not scared, not defeated, but burning with quiet fury. "Teach me to shoot," She said. He studied her face, saw the resolution there. All right. They started that evening. Her hands shook at first, the revolver heavy and foreign, but her aim was true enough, and her determination unwavering. Again, she said after each cylinder. Again. Watching her jaw set, eyes fierce, protective fury channeled into purpose. Amos felt something shift in his chest. This weren't just about charity anymore. Hadn't been for a while. This woman, these babies, they'd become something more. Something worth fighting for. Something worth keeping. The letter came on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a nervous boy from town who wouldn't stay for water despite the heat. Amos recognized the formal script before breaking the seal legal papers, the kind that changed things. What is it? Maybelle asked, flour dusting her hands from morning baking. He read through twice before answering. Formal claim from the Thorns. They're petitioning for custody of the children, claiming abandonment and improper living conditions. The blood drained from her face. Can they do that? They can try. He set the papers on the table. Mind already working. Judge Carter's circuit comes through in 2 weeks. We'll need to prepare a response. With what I have nothing, no money for lawyers, no family to speak for me. She sank into a chair. They'll take my babies. No, the word came out harder than intended. They won't. That afternoon, Amos rode to town despite the heat. He found Martha at her place, already organizing what she called the resistance. Doc Ellis was there, along with Reverend Michaels and, surprising, Jake Morrison's wife Elizabeth. Calvin's overplayed his hand. Martha announced, "That business last week, threatening Maybelle with 4 men, word's gotten around. Doesn't matter if the judge favors their money." Doc Ellis said, pragmatic. "Then we make it matter." Elizabeth spoke up. She was a thin woman with steel in her spine. "My Jake's no friend to Amos, but even he says what the Thorns are doing ain't right. Threatening women and babies, there's lines you don't cross." They planned careful character witnesses, documentation of the abuse Maybelle had suffered, evidence of proper care for the children. It felt thin against Thorn influence, but it was what they had. When Amos returned home, he found Maybelle in an unexpected place, the small wooden chest he kept under his bed. Sarah's things inside. She jerked back guilty. "I'm sorry, I was cleaning and—" "It's all right." He knelt beside her, looking at the contents. Sarah's Bible, some letters, a silver brush. Been meaning to go through these anyway. "Your wife." At his nod, she touched the brush, gentle. She was beautiful. The painting in the parlor. She was. He picked up a small daguerreotype. Sarah smiling shy at the camera. "Would have liked you. I think she had strong opinions about men who mistreat women." "I shouldn't have—" Maybelle started to rise, but he caught her hand. "Stay." They sat on the floor like children, going through memories. He told her about Sarah, her laughter, her terrible cooking, her way with horses, how the fever took her quick, barely time to say goodbye. "I'm sorry," Maybelle whispered. "It's a hard thing, losing love." "It is." He studied her face. "But you know that already." She laughed, bitter. "What I had wasn't love. I know that now. It was ownership, control." Her fingers traced the edge of Sarah's Bible. "He never looked at me the way you're looking at that picture." "How's that?" "Like she was precious. Like losing her broke something in you that never quite healed." The truth of it sat heavy between them. Then Anna cried from the other room, and the moment passed. But something had shifted. Some wall come down. Over the following days, they prepared for the hearing with grim determination. Amos taught Maybelle more than shooting how to stand tall in front of men who judge her, how to speak clear and firm. She practiced her account until she could tell it without shaking. "I was married at 17, she recited, pacing the cabin. James Carter was 12 years older, a widower who needed a mother for his son. I thought—" She paused, started again. I did my duty, kept his house, raised his boy, shared his bed. When I couldn't produce a son after 3 years, he grew angry. When I finally conceived and bore daughters. You don't have to tell it all, Amos said gentle. Yes, I do. The judge needs to hear how they threw me out in night clothes, bleeding still from the birth, how they kept my things, even my mother's ring, how Calvin found sport in— She stopped, jaw tight. Maybelle. She met his eyes. I need to say it, all of it, so they understand what they're trying to send me back to. That evening, searching for more paper to write their response, Maybelle found something unexpected in the bottom of her carpet bag, a folded document tucked beneath the lining. Amos, her voice came strange. Look at this. It was a will, James Carter's will, dated 2 months before his death, leaving his property not to his family but to any children of his blood, regardless of sex, witnessed and sealed proper. He changed it, she breathed. After I told him I was carrying, he must have, but why didn't he tell me? Amos read through careful, because he died before he could. Says here it was filed with a lawyer in Austin. The Thorns might not even know it exists. This changes things, hope crept into her voice. Doesn't it? Maybe. Depends on if the lawyer still has the original. If the Thorns can claim it's fake. He folded it, careful. But it's something. They worked through the night composing telegrams, Amos riding to town at dawn to send them. The lawyer in Austin confirmed he had the original. Would send a certified copy. Small victory, but victory nonetheless. Word of the upcoming hearing spread. The town divided into camps, those who thought Amos harboring a loose woman, those who saw a man protecting the innocent. Some refused him service in their shops. Others, like the blacksmith Samuel Worth, made a point of support. Man stands up for what's right, Samuel said, fixing Amos's wagon wheel without charge. That used to mean something in this country. 3 days before the hearing, trouble came calling. Not Calvin this time, but his younger brother, Marcus, smarter, smoother, more dangerous for it. He arrived alone, dressed like a gentleman. Mr. Hale, he called from the yard. Might I have a word? Amos met him on the porch, rifle casual in hand. Say your piece. I'm here with an offer, a generous one. Marcus produced a leather folder. $500 for you, another $100 for the woman, all legal-like. She signs papers relinquishing claim to the children. You both move on. Everyone wins. Except the babies. The children will be well cared for. Private tutors. Good marriages arranged. He smiled thin. Better than scratching dirt on a failing ranch. My ranch ain't failing. Not yet, but droughts end, Mr. Hale. And when this one does, you'll find water rights have been sold, grazing contracts changed. The Thorns have long memories and longer reach. The threat was velvet-covered but sharp beneath. Amos felt Maybelle's presence behind the door. Listening. Here's my counteroffer, Amos said mild. You and your kin leave us be. The children stay with their mother, and everyone keeps their teeth. Marcus's composure cracked slightly. You're making a mistake. We've tried being reasonable. Reasonable, Maybelle stepped onto the porch, and Amos saw she held the pepper-box pistol he'd been teaching her with. Was it reasonable when Calvin held me down when they took turns? She stopped, breathing hard. Get off our land. Our land? Marcus's eyebrows rose. How domestic. Tell me, Miss Carter, or should I say Mrs. Hale, what story will you tell the judge about your living arrangements? The truth, she said steady. That a good man gave shelter to a woman and babies who needed it. That he's shown more honor and decency than any Thorn ever has. And what else has he shown you? What payment extracted for his kindness? The slur hung in the air like smoke. Amos started forward, but Maybelle caught his arm. The only obscenity here is you, she told Marcus cold. Now leave, before I show you what else he's taught me." Marcus looked at the gun, at her steady hands, and his smile faltered. "You've made your choice. Remember that when consequences come." After he left, Maybelle lowered the gun with shaking hands. "I wanted to shoot him. Lord help me, I wanted to. But you didn't. That's what matters." She laughed wild. "Is it? They'll destroy us anyway, legal or not. They'll find a way." "Maybe." He took the gun gentle, set it aside. "But we'll face it standing up, not crawling." That night, neither could sleep. They sat by the fire, talking low while the babies slept. Stories from childhood, dreams deferred, small jokes that felt large in the darkness. When Maybelle dozed off in her chair, Amos covered her with a blanket, watched the firelight play on her face, this feeling in his chest protective, fierce, tender. He'd thought it buried with Sarah. But here it was, different but no less real. Love, if he was honest. Love for this woman who'd grown strong from breaking, who faced down men twice her size with steady hands, who hummed lullabies even when her own heart was breaking. The day before the hearing, unexpected allies arrived. 3 women from town, led by Prudence Henderson of all people. They carried baskets, determination written on their faces. "We've come to help," Prudence announced. "Whatever needs doing." Maybelle stared. "But you, the things you've said." "I've said plenty I regret." Prudence's weathered face showed discomfort. "Been thinking on it. What happened to you, it ain't right, and us women turning our backs makes us party to it." They cleaned and cooked, minded the babies while Maybelle practiced her testimony one last time. When they left, the cabin fairly sparkled, and Maybelle had a proper dress for court altered from one of Prudence's own. "Why?" Maybelle asked as they prepared to leave. Elizabeth Morrison spoke up. "Because someday it might be our daughters needing help, and we hope someone would stand for them." That evening, Amos found Maybelle by the creek bed, now just dusty stones and memory. She held both babies, singing soft. "Tomorrow changes everything," she said without turning. "Maybe, maybe not." "If I lose them," her voice broke. "I won't survive it. Amos, I won't." He sat beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. "You won't lose them. You can't know that." "I know I'll die before I let them take those babies." The words came fierce, true, "and I know you're stronger than you believe. Whatever comes tomorrow, we face it together." She turned then, eyes bright with tears. Why do you care so much?" A dozen answers rose: duty, rightness, Christian charity. But what came out was simpler. Because somewhere between finding you on that road and now, you and these girls became my family, mine to protect, mine to keep safe. She made a sound, half sob, half laugh. "Amos Hale, you impossible man." "So you keep saying." The moment stretched, full of possibility. Then Emma reached for him, tiny hand grasping, and he took her careful. The weight of her, the trust, felt like a promise. Tomorrow would bring judges and lawyers, threats and lies. But tonight, they were just a man and woman and 2 babies, making what might be a family against all odds and opposition. It had to be enough. He'd make it enough. The night came quiet at first. Just another evening with the wind rattling loose boards and coyotes calling across the prairie. Amos had taken first watch, sitting on the porch with the Winchester across his knees, while Maybelle tried to rest inside with the babies. Tomorrow's hearing weighed heavy, but tonight demanded vigilance. The moon was new, leaving only starlight to see by. Maybe that's why he almost missed the movement near the barn, just a shadow slightly darker than the rest. He eased up slow, rifle ready. Then the night exploded. Fire bloomed at the corner of the barn, spreading fast along dry wood. Shouts erupted from multiple directions. Amos fired at a running figure, heard a curse but no fall. More flames, the chicken coop now, the lean-to where they stored winter feed. "Maybelle," He burst through the door. "They're here." She was already up, both babies clutched tight, the pepper box in her free hand, no panic in her eyes, just fierce determination. "How many?" "Can't tell. 4, maybe 5. Another explosion of flame outside the tool shed. "They're burning us out." Glass shattered as something flew through the window. A torch. Oil-soaked rags wrapped around a stick. Amos kicked it back outside, but smoke was already filling the cabin. "We have to get out." He grabbed blankets, soaked them quick in the water bucket. "Cover the babies. We'll make for Martha's place. They'll be watching the road. Then we go overland. Can you manage?" Her jaw set firm. "I'll manage." They slipped out the back as flames climbed the barn walls. The horses were screaming in the corral, and Amos's heart twisted at leaving them. But the babies came first. Always the babies first. 20 yards from the cabin, a man rose from behind the well. Amos knocked him down with the rifle butt, kept moving. Another appeared near the smokehouse. Maybelle's pepper box cracked twice, and he stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. "There," someone shouted. "They're running!" Hoofbeats pounded behind them. Amos pushed Maybelle toward a dry wash, turned to fire. The Winchester spoke 3 times, steady as heartbeat. One horse squealed and went down. The others veered off, buying time. They ran through darkness and smoke, thorns tearing at clothes, rocks turning under their feet. Emma cried, thin and scared. Anna was ominously silent. Behind them, their home burned orange against the night sky. A rider appeared ahead, cutting off their escape. Amos raised the rifle, but the chamber clicked empty. The man laughed ugly, raising his own weapon. Then his laugh cut short. He toppled from the saddle, and Martha's sturdy form emerged from the shadows, smoking shotgun in hand. "This way, quick!" She led them to where Doc Ellis waited with a wagon. Samuel the blacksmith riding guard. They'd seen the flames. Come running. Good people, the kind that made surviving possible. "Get in, get down," Doc ordered. "Sam, watch our backs." They huddled in the wagon bed as Doc whipped the horses hard. Gunfire cracked behind them, but distant now, confused. The attackers hadn't expected resistance beyond Amos. "Is anyone hurt?" Martha demanded, checking them over with rough efficiency. "Don't think so." Maybelle's voice came thin but steady. "The babies." Both were crying now, healthy, angry cries, best sound in the world, given the circumstances. They made it to Martha's homestead as dawn pearled the eastern sky. Behind them, smoke pillared black where Amos's ranch had stood. Everything he'd built over 6 years, gone in one night of violence. "I'm sorry," Maybelle whispered, staring at the distant smoke. "This is my fault, all of it." "No." Amos turned her to face him. "This is the Thorns' doing, no one else's." Doc was examining a graze on Samuel's arm when riders appeared on the horizon. Everyone tensed, weapons rising. But it was Jake Morrison with 3 of his hands, faces grim. "Saw the smoke," Jake said without preamble. "Came to help, but looks like we're late." "Since when do you help me?" Amos asked, wary. Jake shifted in his saddle. "Since them Thorn boys decided burning out families was acceptable. Man's got to stand for something. Hail, even if that man don't particularly like you." Over the next hour, more arrived. The Reverend with medical supplies, Elizabeth Morrison with food and clothes, even Prudence Henderson, face set in lines of righteous anger. "They've gone too far," she declared. "Attacking in the night like cowards, endangering babies, this ends now." A war council formed in Martha's kitchen. The hearing was in 6 hours, and they needed a plan that went beyond legal arguments. Calvin and 4 others were seen heading back to town just after the fire started. Jake reported, celebrating at the saloon, bold as brass. "So much for law and order," Samuel spat. "Then we make our own order," Martha said. "Doc, you still got that camera equipment?" Doc nodded slow. Thinking evidence. Thinking proof. Sam. Jake, you boys, willing to ride back to what's left of Amos's place. Document everything: boot prints, hoof marks, anything that ties to the Thorns. They agreed ready enough. Meanwhile, others would ensure Maybelle and the babies reached the courthouse safe. Numbers and witnesses. Protection in community. While they planned, Amos found a moment alone with Maybelle. She was feeding the babies, humming soft despite everything. "We lost it all," she said quiet. "Your home, your work." "Not all." He sat beside her, close enough their shoulders touched. "Still got what matters." "Do we after today? If the judge rules against us, then we appeal. We fight. We run if we have to." He touched Anna's tiny fist where it waved in the air. "But we don't give up. Not on them. Not on each other." She leaned into him then, just a little. "I don't deserve you, Amos Hale." "Other way around." They sat quiet, drawing strength from nearness. Then Martha called them to prepare, and the moment passed. But the promise in it remained. The ride to town was tense with possibility. 15 riders surrounded the wagon carrying Maybelle and the babies. Men and women who'd chosen sides, not for money or threats, but for what was right. The courthouse was packed. Word of the night attack had spread like wildfire. Judge Carter, a thin man with careful eyes, looked over the crowd with concern. "This is highly irregular," he said as Jake and Samuel burst in with photographic plates, boots still muddy from Amos's burned ranch. "So's burning out families," Martha shot back. "You'll want to see these, Judge." What followed was not the proceeding Calvin Thorne had expected. Instead of a simple custody hearing, it became something else. Witness after witness spoke about the night attack. Yes, but also about what came before. Maybelle's injuries when found, the threats, the attempted kidnapping. When Maybelle took the stand, she spoke clear and true. Every hurt, every fear, laid bare for judgment. The courtroom grew so quiet you could hear the babies breathing. "They said daughters were worthless," she finished. "Said I'd curse their bloodline, but these children are not curses. They're blessings, and I'll die before I let them be raised thinking otherwise." Calvin tried to object, to claim lies and slander. But then Doc produced the telegrams from Austin the will, properly witnessed, leaving James Carter's property to his children regardless of sex. The Thorns had hidden it, claimed inheritance that wasn't theirs. Moreover, the lawyer from Austin had written, "There are questions about James Carter's death that warrant investigation." The judge's face darkened with each revelation. When photographs of boot prints matching Calvin's were presented taken at the burn site, his jaw tightened further. Mr. Thorne," Judge Carter said finally. "I find serious concerns here. Assault, arson, attempted kidnapping, fraud regarding inheritance." "You can't prove," Calvin started. "Quiet!" The judge's voice cracked like a whip. "I'm ordering a full investigation. Meanwhile, custody of the minor children remains with their mother. Furthermore, any harassment of Mrs. Carter or those helping her will be met with immediate arrest." The courtroom erupted. Calvin lunged forward, had to be restrained. "You can't do this. Them's our blood." "Blood doesn't give you rights to abuse," the judge replied cold. "Marshal, I believe Mr. Thorne needs cooling off in a cell while we investigate these fires." As they led Calvin out, Marcus stood in the back, face carved from stone. His eyes met Amos's, promising this wasn't over. But for now, today, they'd won. Outside the courthouse, Maybelle sagged against Amos. "Is it real, did we?" "It's real." He caught her as her knees buckled, exhaustion finally claiming due. "You did it. You saved them." "We did it," she corrected. "All of us." The crowd around them was celebrating, but Amos only had eyes for the woman in his arms, soot-stained, exhausted, fierce as a mother wolf and beautiful for it. "What now?" she asked. Your ranch is gone. We have nowhere. We have each other, he interrupted. We have friends. We'll rebuild. Jake Morrison approached, hat in hand. About that, me and some of the boys been talking. That section next to my spread, the one with the good spring, it's for sale. We figure with all of us chipping in. Amos stared. You'd do that? Community takes care of its own, Jake said gruff. Even ornery cusses like you, besides. He grinned. My Elizabeth would skin me if I didn't offer. Others pressed forward with offers lumber, labor, livestock to start new. The same town that had gossiped and judged now rallied around them, faced with the greater evil of the thorns. But it was Martha who summed it up best. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand with you when the night comes calling. As they loaded into wagons to return to Martha's temporary shelter until they could build new, Amos caught Maybelle's hand. No more looking back, he said. From here, we look forward, together. She squeezed his fingers, and in her eyes he saw the same feeling that filled his chest. Not quite spoken yet, but growing stronger with each shared trial. Behind them, their old life lay in ashes. Ahead waited the hard work of building new, but they'd face it as they'd face the fire together, unbowed, and surrounded by the family they'd chosen and who'd chosen them in return. The babies slept peaceful in their mother's arms, unaware of how close they'd come to losing everything. That innocence was worth every sacrifice, every risk. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Thorns wouldn't accept defeat easy. Marcus was still free, still planning. But tonight, they'd survived. They'd won. And in this hard country, that was its own kind of miracle. The sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of hope. And for the first time since finding Maybelle on that dusty road, Amos truly believed they might make it after all. The days after the fire passed in a blur of work and planning. Martha's homestead became a hub of activity as neighbors arrived with lumber, tools, and willing hands. The new land Jake Morrison had mentioned, 40 acres with a sweet spring that ran even in drought, would be theirs by week's end, the community pooling resources to make it happen. But tonight, the work was done. The helpers had returned to their own homes, leaving Amos and Maybelle alone for the first time since the attack. The babies slept peaceful in Martha's spare room while their mother sat on the porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Can't sleep, Amos joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Too much spinning in my head. She accepted the cup, grateful. Keep thinking I'll wake and find it's all been a dream. The help, the land, the judges ruling. No dream, though I understand the feeling. They sat quiet, listening to night sounds, crickets, a distant owl, the eternal wind across grass. The silence between them had grown comfortable these past weeks, but tonight it felt charged with something more. I need to say something, Maybelle began, then stopped. No, that's not right. I need to thank you. You've thanked me plenty. Not for that. For seeing me as more than damaged goods, for treating my girls like they matter. Her voice caught. For making me remember what it feels like to be treated with tenderness. Amos set down his cup, careful. Maybelle, please, let me finish. That night, when they came with fire, I thought we'd die, but you stood between us and harm without hesitation, and when I saw your home burning, everything you'd worked for. She turned to face him full. I realized something. The moonlight caught her eyes, turned them silver green. What's that? That I'd rather face fire with you than safety with anyone else. The words hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Amos felt his heart hammering, loud as forge work. Maybelle, She pressed fingers to his lips. Gentle. I know we've been careful. Know you've been honorable. Never pressing, never assuming. But I'm tired of careful. Tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel when you look at me. And what do you feel? Like I'm waking up after a long, cold sleep. She moved closer, close enough he could smell the lavender soap in her hair. Like maybe I'm allowed to want things again, want you. His hands found her face, thumbs tracing cheekbones that had been bruised when first they met. You sure after everything you've been through? Don't! Her voice came fierce. Don't make this about him, about what came before. This is about us, about now. She leaned in, and their lips met soft as prayer. For a moment, that was all just the sweet pressure of mouth on mouth, gentle as spring rain. Then she made a sound, half sigh, half plea, and the kiss deepened. Kiss me harder, she pleaded against his mouth, fingers tangling in his hair. His arms came around her, pulling her close as she'd asked. She tasted of coffee and courage, of hope hard won. When his hand slid to her waist, she pressed closer still. He pulled back just enough to whisper, "Darlin, you taste like fire," as his hand slid lower, resting at the small of her back. She laughed, breathless. Is that good? Best thing I ever tasted. They kissed again, longer this time. Years of loneliness and loss melting away in the heat between them. When they finally parted, both breathing hard. Maybelle's eyes were bright with tears. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again, she confessed. Didn't think I'd want to. And now I want everything. A life, a home, a future. She caught his hands in hers. With you, if you'll have us, me and the girls. If I'll have you, he laughed, amazed. Woman, I've been yours since the moment you stood up to Calvin with that pepper box, fierce as any warrior. Only then, she teased. Well, maybe a little before, maybe from when I saw you holding those babies like they were worth the whole world. He grew serious. They are, worth everything. And so are you. Fresh tears tracked down her cheeks. Amos Hale, you beautiful, impossible man. So you keep saying. He wiped her tears gentle. Question is, what do we do about it? She considered, then stood, pulling him up with her. Right now, we go inside, we check on our girls, and tomorrow, we start building our life together. Our girls, he repeated, the words settling warm in his chest. Our life. Unless you got objections. Not a one. They walked inside hand in hand, stopping first at the room where Anna and Emma slept. The twins had grown so much in the weeks since he'd found them, cheeks round with health, eyes bright and curious when awake. Looking at them now, peaceful in sleep, he felt that fierce protective love that had surprised him with its intensity. They'll need a father, Maybelle said soft. A real one. The kind who teaches them they're valuable, that they're loved. They've got one, Amos promised. Long as I'm breathing. She squeezed his hand, and they stood watching the babies breathe, tiny chests rising and falling in rhythm. This was what they'd fought for, what they'd face fire for again if needed. This quiet moment, this simple peace. Later, sitting by the dying fire in Martha's parlor, they talked through the night, not of passion that would come in its time, but of practical dreams. The house they'd build on the new land, with rooms enough for the girls to grow, the cattle they'd raise, the garden Maybelle would plant, the life they'd craft from prairie dirt and determination. We should marry soon, Amos said as dawn pinked the eastern sky. Make it proper, for the girls' sake as much as the town's. Is that a proposal, Mr. Hale? He slid from his chair to one knee, catching her hands. Maybelle Carter, you've brought light back to my life when I thought darkness was all I deserved. You've shown me that love can come twice if a man's lucky enough. Will you marry me? Will you let me be husband to you and father to those girls? Yes. No hesitation, just that single word falling like benediction. Yes to all of it. He rose and kissed her again, sealing the promise. This kiss was different from the first, less desperate, more certain. The kiss of two people who'd chosen each other clear-eyed, who'd face whatever came as one. A cry from the next room broke them apart. Emma, always the early riser. Maybelle moved to go, but Amos caught her hand. Let me need to start practicing being a papa. Her smile could have lit the whole prairie. I love you, Amos Hale. And I love you, Maybelle soon-to-be Hale. He went to tend the baby, lifting her careful from the crib. Emma studied him with serious eyes, then reached up to grab his nose. He laughed, the sound rich and full in the quiet morning. Through the doorway, he saw Maybelle watching, one hand pressed to her heart. This was what home meant, not walls and roofs, though they'd build those too, but this feeling, this belonging, this choice to face each day together. Marcus Thorne was still out there, planning revenge. The drought would break eventually, bringing new challenges. The gossips would have plenty to say about their quick marriage. But none of that mattered measured against the weight of a baby in his arms and the woman he loved smiling at him through tears of joy. They'd been tested by fire, literal and figurative. They'd survived. And now, in the ashes of what was lost, they'd grow something new and strong in theirs. The sun rose full over the prairie, painting everything gold. A new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in years, Amos Hale looked forward to all the days to come. Papa, he tested the word as Emma gurgled. I'm your papa now. From the doorway, Maybelle laughed soft. She approves. And Anna will love you just as fierce. They're lucky girls. Amos Hale. No, he corrected, walking back to her with Emma in his arms. I'm the lucky one. They stood together in the morning light, a family forged from loss and found in love. Outside, the prairie stretched endless, full of promise and possibility. And they'd meet it all together come drought or plenty, hardship or harvest. That was the gift of second chances. Amos realized, not that they erased the past, but that they proved the future could be different, could be better, could be everything you never dared hope for until someone showed you how to hope again. The fire had taken his old life, but from those ashes, something finer had risen, something worth every sacrifice that had brought them to this moment. This woman, these children, this love, this home. The morning of the confrontation dawned clear and still, the kind of day that seemed to hold its breath. Amos stood at the edge of their new property, watching the road that wound through the valley. 3 weeks had passed since the fire, since the night he and Maybelle had declared their love. They'd married quiet-like at Martha's place, Reverend Michaels presiding while the twins cooed in their mother's arms. Now, word had come through Sam the blacksmith Marcus Thorne was riding in with men from outside the county, not locals who might hesitate, but hired guns who'd do whatever paid. How many? Maybelle asked, joining him. She'd taken to wearing his mother's old Colt on her hip, handling it natural as breathing. Sam counted 8, maybe 10. He pulled her close. I want you to take the girls to Martha's. Stay there till... No, her voice came flat and final. We stand together, or not at all. Maybelle. Would you run if it was just you? He knew better than to lie. No. Then don't ask me to. This is our land, our life. I won't let them take it. Before he could argue further, riders appeared on the horizon. Not the Thorns' Jake Morrison in his hands. Elizabeth driving their wagon. Behind them, more neighbors. Doc Ellis on his old mare. Samuel with his forge hammer across his saddle. Even Prudence Henderson, grim-faced and carrying her late husband's rifle. Thought you might need company, Jake said, dismounting. Man shouldn't face his troubles alone. This ain't your fight, Amos said, though gratitude swelled in his chest. Sure it is. Martha appeared from the direction of her place, shotgun over her shoulder. Thorns think they can hire outsiders to do their dirty work. Time they learn different. By the time Marcus arrived, 20 people stood spread across the yard, men and women who'd chosen community over comfort. Right over easy. The hired guns with Marcus looked uncertain now, calculating odds that had shifted dramatic. Marcus himself seemed smaller somehow, his gentleman's clothes dusty from the ride, without Calvin's brute presence. He looked like what he was, a man clinging to old power in a changing world. "Quite the welcoming committee," he said, reining up just outside rifle range. "All this for little old me." "State your business, Thorn," Amos called back. "Then move along." "My business," Marcus laughed bitter. "My business is family honor, family property." His eyes found Maybelle, family blood. "The judge ruled," Doc Ellis started. "Judges can be replaced, bought, convinced to see different." Marcus leaned forward in his saddle. "But I'm not here for legal talk. I'm here with a proposition." "We're listening," Amos said, though every instinct screamed danger. "Single combat, you and me, Hale. Winner takes all the women, leave with me, or I ride away forever. No more Thorn claims on those children." "No," Maybelle stepped forward. "Absolutely not. You don't gamble with our lives." "It's not your choice," Marcus cut her off. "This is between men. Always has been." That did it. Maybelle strode out before anyone could stop her, past Amos, past the line of neighbors, right up to Marcus's horse. The hired guns tensed, but she ignored them complete. "Between men," her voice carried clear. "Then let me make it simple. Those are my children. This is my life. You want to settle this?" She drew the Colt smooth and fast. "Then face me." Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "Don't be ridiculous. I don't fight women." "No, you just beat them. Throw them out to die. Burn their homes." She cocked the hammer. "But you won't fight one even when she's armed and willing." "This is absurd." "Is it? You claim those babies are Thorn blood? Well, they're Carter blood too. My blood. If blood gives you rights, then it gives me the same." She raised her voice so all could hear. "I challenge you. Marcus Thorn, here and now, unless you're too coward to face a woman fair." The hired guns shifted, restless. This wasn't what they'd signed on for, a woman defending her children, neighbors standing witness. The righteousness of it, the wrongness of their purpose, hung obvious in the morning air. Marcus's face flushed dark. "You dare—" "I dare plenty. Question is, do you—" Maybelle stood steady as stone. "Face me or ride away. But know this, every man you hired will spread the tale. How Marcus Thorn backed down from a mother protecting her babies. How all his money couldn't buy him courage." "Maybelle," Amos warned, moving closer. But Jake Morrison caught his arm. "Let her do this," Jake murmured. "Look at his men. They're already doubting." He was right. The hired guns exchanged glances, hands moving away from weapons. One even smiled slight, like he appreciated the show. Marcus saw it too. Trapped now, fight a woman and be shamed, or refuse and be shamed worse. "This is beneath me," he tried. "Yes," Maybelle agreed. "You are beneath this, beneath us, beneath any decent person's notice." She lowered the gun slightly, dismissive. "So run along, Marcus. Go back to your big house and your small life, but don't come here again. Next time, I won't offer a fair fight." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the hired guns spoke up. "I didn't sign on to fight women and babies," he announced. "I'm out." "Me too," another agreed. "This ain't right." One by one, they wheeled their horses around. Marcus shouted at them, threatened, promised more money, but shame is stronger than gold sometimes. And these men had found theirs. Finally, only Marcus remained, alone and furious on his fine horse. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is." This from Doc Ellis, moving his mare forward. "I've written the state medical board about certain irregularities in your cousin James's death. They're very interested, as is the federal marshal." Marcus went pale. "You can't prove anything." "Maybe not, but investigations are such messy things. All those questions, all that attention." Doc smiled mild. Better you should disappear quiet like. Mexico's nice this time of year. Or California. Samuel suggested. Lots of opportunities for a man willing to work honest. Course, if you stay. Jake let the threat hang. Marcus looked around the circle of faces, finding no sympathy, no weakness, just people who'd chosen their side and wouldn't be moved. His shoulders slumped in defeat. You'll regret this, he said finally, but the words lacked conviction. All of you. Only thing I regret, Martha called out, is not shooting you both that first day you threatened this girl. Marcus wheeled his horse around, spurring hard toward town. They watched until he was just dust on the horizon, then further still, making sure. It's done, Jake said finally. He won't be back, not with federal marshals sniffing around. The gathering broke up slow, neighbors shaking hands, sharing quiet words. More than a conflict had been settled, a community had been forged, tested in fire and threat. Amos found Maybelle standing where she'd faced Marcus down, gun still in her hand, gentle. He took the weapon, uncocked it safe. That was the bravest, most foolish thing I've ever seen, he said. Had to be done. She was shaking now, reaction setting in. Had to show everyone that we won't be victims anymore. You surely did that. He pulled her close, felt her trembling against him. You surely did. That evening, they held a celebration of sorts at the new home site. Tables made of planks and sawhorses groaned under food the women had brought. Children played in the grass while adults shared stories and stronger drinks. Never seen anything like it, Jake admitted to Amos, watching Maybelle teach Elizabeth some frontier trick with rope. Woman's got more sand than most men. She does, Amos agreed, proud. Makes a man think about what strength really means. Makes a man think about a lot of things. Jake took a long pull from his flask. Maybe we've been wrong. Thinking women need protecting instead of respecting. Maybe they're stronger than us in ways that matter. Speaking truth now. They stood comfortable in newfound friendship, watching their wives laugh together. The twins passed from arm to arm, fussed over by every woman present. Community embraced complete. As the sun set, painting the sky in glory, Reverend Michaels called for attention. Seems fitting, he said, to consecrate this ground proper, to bless this new beginning. They gathered in a circle, rough folk in rough clothes, but reverent nonetheless. The Reverend spoke of trials and triumph, of love that builds rather than destroys, of the courage found in standing together. Let this home be a beacon, he finished. Let it stand as proof that good people, joined in purpose, can overcome any evil. Amen, the gathering chorused, and the word felt like a seal on all that had passed. Later, after the neighbors had gone home, Amos and Maybelle stood where their house would rise. The foundation was already marked, lumber stacked and waiting. Tomorrow, the building would begin in earnest. No more looking over our shoulders, Maybelle said, leaning into his strength. No more fear. No more, he agreed. Just the future now. Anna fussed in her arms, and Maybelle shifted to comfort her. Amos took Emma, who grabbed for his nose with determined fingers. They stood there, the four of them, as stars began their ancient dance overhead. What are you thinking? Maybelle asked, seeing his distant expression. About circles, he said slow. How I built my first house for Sarah, full of hope. How it became a tomb for grief. How the thorns burned it down, trying to destroy us. He looked at her steady. And how from those ashes, we get to build something new, something better, together. Together, she echoed, and sealed it with a kiss. The prairie wind sang around them, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called, but it seemed distant now, unthreatening. They'd faced the worst men could do and stood firm. Whatever nature might bring seemed small in comparison. Tomorrow would bring hammers and saws, sweat and labor. The house would rise board by board, made real by community effort and stubborn love. But tonight was for standing quiet on their own land, holding their daughters, breathing free air. "Welcome home," Amos whispered, and meant it full. "Home," Maybelle repeated, tasting the word like honey. "Yes, finally, truly home." The stars wheeled overhead, eternal and bright, and beneath them, a family stood whole and unbroken, ready for whatever came next. The fight was over. The building could begin. Spring came to the prairie like a miracle after the long drought. The first rain fell gentle in late March, then stronger through April, until the grass grew green and thick as anyone could remember. The creek that had run dry now sang over stones, and wildflowers painted the land in colors that made the heart lift. Amos stood on the porch of their new home, watching morning light catch on fresh-painted shutters. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with Marcus Thorne. 6 months of building and planting and hoping. The house wasn't large 3 rooms and a loft, but it was solid, made with care by neighbors who'd become family. "Papa, Papa," Anna's voice carried from inside, followed by the patter of small feet. She'd started walking 2 weeks ago, Emma right behind her, and now keeping track of them was like herding cats. He scooped her up as she barreled through the door, her sister close behind. "Where's the fire, little one?" "Mama says come see the garden." In the kitchen garden, Maybelle knelt among rows of young plants, her face bright with satisfaction. The apron over her dress was dirty, her hair escaping from its pins, and Amos thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful. "Look," she said, pointing to tiny green shoots. "The corn's coming up, and the beans, the squash, everything we planted." "Everything we planted is growing," he agreed, setting the girls down to explore. "Just like us." She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, and moved into his arms, easy as breathing. "Remember last year when I couldn't imagine surviving the week, much less thriving?" "I remember." He kissed her forehead, tasting sun and earth. "You were fierce even then, just took time to see it." "Took you to see it," she corrected, "to show me I was worth seeing." They stood quiet, watching their daughters chase butterflies between the rows. The simple piece of it still caught Amos sometimes, how life could turn from bitter to sweet if you found the right person to share it with. "Letter came," Maybelle said after a moment. "From Austin." His arms tightened. "The lawyers. The investigation's closed. Officially." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "James's death was ruled natural causes, weak heart. They said, but Marcus and Calvin won't be coming back. Seems they found pressing business in California. Permanent business. Good riddance. The estate's been settled too. The girls will receive their father's property when they come of age. Not much, the Thornes took what they could, but enough for dowries, education, choices. Our girls will have more than dowries." Amos said firm. "They'll have skills, strength, the knowledge they're valuable for more than marriage prospects." Maybelle's smile could have powered the sun. "Listen to you, Amos Hale, regular revolutionary. You're a bad influence. Mrs. Hale." "The very worst," she agreed, and kissed him soundly. A wagon's rattle interrupted them. Doc Ellis pulled up, Martha beside him on the seat. They'd been keeping company regular since the Troubles. 2 old souls finding unexpected companionship. "Morning, folks," Doc called. "Brought something for the girls." He produced 2 small dolls, carved careful and dressed in scraps of calico. Anna and Emma squealed delight, clutching their new treasures. "Doc, you spoil them," Maybelle protested. "Somebody should." His eyes twinkled. "Besides, got to practice. Martha and I have news." Martha actually blushed, Martha, who'd faced down armed men without flinching. "We're getting married. Next month. At our age. Can you imagine?" The congratulations came hearty and genuine. Love finding people twice was rare enough. Love finding them in their later years was precious as gold. "We want to hold the wedding here," Martha added. If you're willing, seems fitting. After everything, this place has become the heart of something good. We'd be honored, Maybelle said, tears threatening, deeply honored. After they left, the day continued its gentle rhythm. Chores shared, meals prepared, children tended. The ordinary made extraordinary by being chosen, being shared. That evening, neighbors gathered as they did most Sundays now. Not formal-like, just natural community. Jake and Elizabeth Morrison brought fresh bread. Samuel arrived with his fiddle. Even Prudence Henderson came, her judgmental edges worn smooth by witnessing real courage. They ate outside, tables groaning under shared bounty. The drought was memory now, the land generous in response to rain and care. Talk flowed easy crop prices, children's antics, plans for a school come fall. We should build a proper church. Reverend Michaels suggested. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls and faith. Could use the timber from the old Thorn place, Jake offered. Sitting empty now, going to waste. There was poetic justice in that building, something holy from the bones of cruelty. The motion carried unanimous. As twilight painted the sky purple, Samuel tuned his fiddle and music filled the air. Couples danced on packed earth. Children spun dizzy circles. And for a moment the prairie felt like paradise. Amos watched Maybelle dance with both girls, one on each hip, her laughter bright as stars. The woman who'd arrived broken and desperate had become the heart of this community, her strength inspiring others to find their own. You did good, Martha said, appearing at his elbow. Both of you showed us what courage looks like. We just survived, Amos said, same as anyone would. No, her voice was firm. You did more. You chose love over fear, community over isolation. You let us help. Let us be part of something bigger than our own small lives. She patted his arm. That's rare, Amos Hale, precious rare. Later, after the guests had gone and the girls were abed, Amos and Maybelle sat on their porch watching stars appear. The quilt over their laps was new made, pieces from many neighbors sewn together into something whole. Happy? He asked, though her contentment radiated clear. Beyond words. She laced their fingers together. Sometimes I think about that night on the road, how close I came to giving up, if you hadn't stopped. But I did. We can't live in what-ifs, only in what is. And what is wonderful. She leaned her head against his shoulder. We have a home, healthy children, friends who've become family. We faced the worst and came through stronger. Together, he added. That's the key. Together. They rocked quiet, listening to night sounds, crickets, wind in grass, a distant owl. The same sounds that had once emphasized Amos's loneliness now sang of fullness, of life shared and multiplied. I have something to tell you, Maybelle said, been waiting for the right moment. Something in her tone made him turn. Her face held that secret smile women got when they knew something world-changing. Tell me. She took his hand, placed it gentle on her still flat belly. Come winter, the girls will have a brother or sister. The world stopped, started again, spun faster. We're having a baby. Tears tracked down her cheeks, but her smile was radiant. Are you happy? Happy. He pulled her close, careful as precious china. Woman, happy don't begin to cover it. I'm whole. They held each other as stars wheeled overhead. Two souls who'd found home in each other against all odds. Inside, their daughter slept peaceful beneath Maybelle's heart. New life grew. Around them, the prairie stretched endless and full of promise. Our family, Amos whispered, our life. Our future, Maybelle agreed. Whatever it brings. And it would bring plenty joys and sorrows, triumphs and trials. The new church would rise, the school would open, the community would grow. Anna and Emma would become strong women who knew their worth. the new baby a son. As it happened, would learn gentleness from his father and courage from his mother. But those were tomorrow's stories. Tonight was for sitting quiet on the porch they'd built with their own hands, surrounded by the life they'd chosen, the love they'd fought to claim. The drought had ended. The thorns were gone. And in their place, something green and good was growing. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Sometimes the greatest courage is opening your heart again after it's been broken. Sometimes family isn't about blood, but about who shows up when the night comes calling. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get a second chance at everything. Amos kissed his wife's forehead, felt their child stir beneath his hand, heard their daughters breathing safe inside. The man who'd thought his life was over had found it just beginning. The woman who'd been told she was worthless had discovered her infinite value. Together, they'd built more than a house. They'd built a home, and that made all the difference in the world. The stars sang their ancient songs. The prairie wind whispered secrets. And on a small homestead in the vast American West, a family lived and loved and looked toward tomorrow with hope. It was, in the end, enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're enjoying this tale. Are you driving through the countryside, relaxing at home, or perhaps winding down after a long day? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's connect over our shared love of Western romance. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night. Give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that hype button to help more listeners discover these heartfelt tales of courage and love in the American frontier.